Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, and this is Style in V, and this is a tutorial on how to make this two-side gathers handkerchief gown and a princess dart. So if it's something you're interested in learning, kindly stay tuned and watch to the end of this video. So let's get started. So to make this gown, these are all you'll be needing to make this gown. So I have my hardnet here, it's about 1 yard of hardnet. I also have my lining piece here, it's 1 yard, and also my thread here and my zipper here, and also the fabric. So this is a check fabric, and I'll be using about 4 yards of fabric to make this dress. So I've gone ahead to mark out all the vertical lines for this pattern paper. That's from the top line here. So the first thing for you to do is that from the start of the pattern paper itself, you come down by 1 inch to get your top line and you mark it straight down. I also came down by 10 inches for my bust point, by 14 inches for my underbust, by 17 inches to get my waistline, and from the waistline I came down by 9 inches to get the hip line, and from the waistline I also came down by the length at which I want the gown to be. Okay, so mine is 24 inches, but this length is not up to, so this is 22 inches, and I will add the remaining length on the fabric. So the next thing for me to do is that I'll divide my shoulder measurements by 2 and I'll mark it straight down, and I'll also take my neck width of 3.5 inches and I'll take my 1 inch for the shoulder slope. So I'll connect from the neck width to meet the shoulder slope like this. So when I'm done, I'll divide my bust circumference by 6 and add 1.5 as my armhole depth. Now because this is a sleeveless dress, I will minus 1 inch from whatever measurement I get. So I got 8 inches and I'll mark 7 inches. So I'll proceed to connect all the lines together like this, as you can see me doing, and I'll just give it an L shape. So this is our chest line, also known as the bust line. So the next thing for me to do is to get the midpoint of the line, and I'll come in here by 0.5 inches and I'll connect from the shoulder line here to meet the 0.5 inches. From the 0.5 inches I'll give it the armhole curve like this, and this is what we have. The next step for me to do is to determine the depth of the neckline. I'll be marking 4 inches as my neck depth, and I'll proceed to give it the round neckline shape, as you all can see me doing right here. So this is what we have. The next step is to mark half of my nipple to nipple on the bust point, the underbust, and also on the waistline, and I'll come down by 6 inches below the waistline and also mark half of my nipple to nipple on this point here. So when I'm done, I will connect all the lines together like this. So my nipple to nipple is 8 inches, and it means I marked 4 inches. So I'll connect all the lines like this. The next step is to create a dart, and I'll come in by 0.75 inch on both sides of the waistline like this, and I'll connect to meet the underbust. From the underbust to meet the waistline here, the same thing I'll do to the other side like this. So this is to create the dart legs, and also connect from the waistline to meet the 6 inches below my waistline like this, as you all can see me doing right here. So I'll connect all the lines like this, as you can see me doing right here. So when I'm done, the next step is to tighten the underbust, and from the dart legs on the underbust area I'll come in by 0.5 inches on both sides. Okay, I'll mark 0.5 inch on both sides, and I'll reconnect it to meet the waistline like this, as you can see me doing right here. So when I'm done, I'll give it a curve from the underbust to meet the bust point like this, as you can see me doing right here. I'll also flip it to the other side and do the same thing, connect from the underbust to the bust point. So you can see what we have. So when I'm done, the next thing for me to do is to give it the princess dart, and I'll get the midpoint of this armhole like this. I'll get the midpoint and I'll mark it straight down, and I'll connect from the midpoint to the bust point using the curvy side of my ruler. So when I'm done, I will come in by 0.5 inches on both sides like this, and I'll reconnect it to meet the bust point area, placing my ruler like so on both sides, and this is what we have. So when I'm done, I'll blend, and the next thing for me to do is to measure whatever that I took, and I'll come up by it. So I took 1 inch, so it means I'm coming up by 1 inch, and I'll reconnect it like this, and I'll create a new armhole for it. So I'll create a new armhole for the dress, and this is what we have. So the next step for us to do is to divide our bust circumference on the chest line by 4. So I'll proceed to mark my, so mine is 10 inches, and I'll mark it straight down, and I'll replace the dart I took around the armhole area, which is 1 inch, and I'll mark it on this point here, and this is what we have. The next step is to divide my waist circumference by 4, and I'll mark it here. Now I'll replace whatever that I took. So I took 1.5 inches dart, but I'll replace with 1 inch dart to give it that snatchy look on the dress. I'll also divide my hip circumference by 4, and I'll note this down here. Now whatever measurements I have around the hip area, I will place it on the gown length area like this. Okay, so you divide your hip circumference also on the gown length area, and you mark it straight down like this. So when you're done, the next thing for you to do is to connect all the lines together. So I'll connect from the chest line to the waistline, and I'll flip my ruler and connect from the waistline to the hip line, and from the hip line straight down to meet the gown length. So this is what I have, right? So I'll proceed to mark out the side dart. So the difference between my back half length and front half length is 1 inch. So I'll come down by 1 inch from my bust point, and I'll connect to meet the midpoint right here. So this part will be closed, so we won't be needing this in the pattern paper. So let's proceed to draft out the back pattern. From the shoulder line here, I'll proceed to mark my half length, which is 16 inches. So remember I said my front half length is 17 inches and my back half length is 16 inches. So I'll proceed to mark 16 inches like this, as you can see me doing right here. So when I'm done, I'll connect all the lines together like this. So the next step for me to do is to come down by 9 inches below the waistline to mark my hip line. The same thing we did to the front, we'll do the same thing to the back pattern. So I'll come down by 9 inches to get my hip line, and this is what we have. So you can see what we have right here. So I'll label this my waistline, my hip line, and from the waistline I'll come down by 22 inches because I came down by 22 inches from the waistline to get the gown length. So you can also do the same thing. You can measure whatever you have from your waistline to your gown length from your front pattern, and you mark the same number there. So mine is 22 inches, and I'll mark 22 inches from the waistline to the gown length. So I'll proceed to add all the lines together. I'll mark all the lines together like this, so you can see what we have right here. So this is our gown length. So the next step for me to do is to divide my shoulder measurements by 2, and I'll mark it straight down from the center back, and this is what we have. I'll also proceed to mark out my neck width of 3.5 inches, and I'll come down by 1 inch to get my shoulder slope, and I'll connect from the neck width to the shoulder slope. So when I'm done, I will also mark out the armhole depth, which is 7 inches, and I will connect all the lines together like this and give it an L shape. So this is a chest line, so I'll also give it the armhole curve like this. So for this part, we will not be going in by 0.5 inches as we did in the front. So I'll extend the chest line to the center back like this, and the next step for me to do is to take the darts, and I'll mark half of my nipple to nipple on the chest line, on the waistline, and 6 inches below my waistline like this, and also mark out the half of my nipple to nipple on this area. So when I'm done, I'll connect all lines together like this, as you can see me doing right here. So the next thing is to create the dart legs, and I'll come in by 0.75 inches on both sides like this, and I'll connect to meet the chest line area. That's from the waistline to the chest line area like this, and this is what we have right here. So the next step for me to do is to divide our bust circumference on the chest line by 4, and I'll mark it straight down. The waist circumference by 4 I'll mark and replace 1 inch for my dart instead of 1.5 inches. So on the hip I'll divide my hip circumference by 4. I'll mark it straight down. Whatever measurement I have around the hip line, I'll place it on the gown length right here. So when I'm done, I'll connect all the lines together from my chest line to meet my waistline, and from my waistline to the hip line, like so, and from the hip line straight to meet the gown length. And this is what we have. So when we're done, the next thing for us to do is to come down by 1 inch for our neck width for the back. So I also proceed to give it the curve like this. So I'll proceed to give it the round curve like this, and this is what we have. So the next step is to come down by 3 inches from the waistline, and I'll mark it straight down. So when I'm done, I will take whatever measurement I have on that area, and I'll minus 1 inch. So remember, I marked 4 inches as my nipple, half of my nipple to nipple. So I'll minus 1 inch from half of my nipple to nipple, which is 3 inches. I'll mark it on the hip line straight down to meet the gown length. So when I'm done, I'll connect all the lines together like this, as you can see me doing right here. So the next step for me to do is to connect from this 3 inches straight to meet the hip line here. So just watch how I am connecting it, and you will also do the same. So this is what we have right here. So you can use your curve ruler to do this, so but I prefer to use my hands. So this part will be going off from the pattern. So the same thing we do to the front, we will also do the same thing to the back. So the same thing I did to the front, I also do the same thing to the back. So I'll come down by 3 inches from the waistline of the back, and I'll mark it straight down. On the hip line, I'll mark 3 inches. That is, I minus 1 inch from half of my nipple to nipple. So I'll mark it from the hip line straight down to meet the gown length like this. And when I'm done, I will connect all the lines together using the straight parts of my ruler. So the next thing I will do is to connect from this 3 inches down to meet the hip line like this, so giving it this curve. So you can see what we have right here. So I'll proceed to divide the half length from the lower bodice like this, and I'll close up the side dart and reconnect it like this, as you all can see me doing right here, and also trim up following the shape to divide the pattern. So you can see what we have right here. So I'll be closing the darts with a masking tape. That's the side darts with a masking tape when I am done. So I've closed it, and it's now time for me to add my allowance. I love to add the allowance on directly on my pattern paper instead of my fabric. So I'll just proceed to add 1 for 8, that is 1.5 inches allowance to the side of the pattern like this, and I will connect all of them together like so, as you can see me doing right here. So I'll cut this off and keep this, and I'll label this. This is the side front, and also this is the center front. I also proceed to cut out the neckline shape like this, and this is what we have. And I will take the lower bodice off. Now I will have to close up this dart because we will not be sewing it in the dress. So I have to close this up like this, as you can see me doing right here. I'll just close this up. I'll close up the dart like this with my masking tape, and the next thing for me to do is to blend. Yes, I'll have to blend that end here. So I'll proceed to add my allowance. That is the 1 for 8 inches allowance that I add, the 1.5 inches allowance that I add. Yes, and I will connect them together like this, and this is what we have. So I also proceed to add half of an inch, yes, as the joining allowance like this. So just watch what I am doing, and you also do the same thing. I'll reconnect and follow the shape of the pattern like this. So I'll trim this off, and this is what we have right here. So I'll label it the front pattern. So let's proceed to mark out the pattern for the back. So for the back piece here, I'll do the same thing I did for the front. I also add my allowance to the side, that is 1.5 inches allowance. I'll connect like this, and I'll open this up like so, and I will cut following the shape of the pattern. And I also close up these darts because I won't be using this dart. I won't be sewing the darts even at the back pattern. I'll close it up with my masking tape, and this is what we have. I'll label it the back pattern. Now I did not remove my zipper bulge dart, so it means I'll come up from this waistline here by 0.5 inches and I'll reconnect it to meet the side of the waistline like this. So this will be going off. So I also love to come in by 0.5 inches again, so but this part is up, so you can just do the first method and it will still be okay. So but I just love to do this two method whenever I am making a dress. So I'll proceed to take off this first one and also this second one, and this is what we have. So I'll keep this aside. So I'll proceed to close up the darts that we have around this area here. I'll close it up because like I said, we will not be sewing this. So I'll close it up with my masking tape, and this is what we have. So the next thing for me to do is to come down here by 0.5 inches on the waistline area and connect it to meet the side part of the waistline area. So you can see what we have right here, and I'll take this off. So this is to eliminate any form of zipper bulge around the waistline area. So I'll reconnect the lines here and also come in by 0.5 inches. Like I said, you can do the first method and it will be fine. So I'll come down by 6 inches below the waistline and reconnect it like this. So this method, like I said earlier, is optional. So I'll proceed to take this out like this and also add my allowance of 0.5 inches around, following the shape like this. So I'll connect it like this, and this is what we have, and also the one for 8 inches allowance, and I'll trim this off following the shape. So in our next video, I'll be teaching you all how to sew this gown. So this is just the drafting process, and this is all the pattern that we have, and on the next video we'll be learning how to sew the gown. So see you in our next video, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.